Hello, everyone. Was there anyone who has seen me before here? No? Okay, yeah, you. I know you guys. Okay, great to meet you again. Yeah, I was here in 2011, so that's been a while. So not that regular user. Hopefully, I will be here more often. Nice to be here, and for the weather, yeah, it was a joke that spring looked like that, but believe me, it can be worse. I'm coming from Finland, so it was snowing today, so I'm glad to be here. It's only raining. Yeah, I'm talking about building web applications in Java. It's part of our Chuck door that we are doing. We have just released a new version a couple of months ago and want to introduce that to everyone. First, who knows Vaadin? Nearly. Who is using Vaadin? Okay, couple of. Vaadin 6? No. Vaadin 7? Okay. You started with one. Yeah, me too. No, I started with number 1. Yeah, so for those who doesn't know Vaadin at all, it's an open source framework for building web applications. Apache a license, so you can freely use it. It has quite a few users around the world. This is based on some metrics, which I don't know, but it says that 150,000 users approximately on daily basis. Usually it's used for the internal applications, so big business applications. I'm not sure what you're building there, but not websites, more like applications and something that not necessarily run in a public internet at all, but intranets and so forth. Based on OpenHub, we are an activity statistics, we are the number 2. Spring MVC is the number 1 in Java frameworks. So, getting there. Now, what I was thinking of telling you, first, what Vaadin is, sort of like an introduction to those who what it's actually trying to solve there, and secondly, how it's going to solve it, what's the idea behind it, and then the number 3, top 10 features. This is very subjective, but something that I wanted to share. That what I feel that is still like the thing with the framework. Why I like it still. And then last couple of ways how do you get started with it. So even though you are using Vaadin, maybe that gives some ideas that for the next application, and at least you can see a couple of different IDEs. Yes, modern web applications. That's what we are trying to do here. And what do we mean by that? This is one of our examples. So, application like snappy, lot of data, things like filtering, drag and drop, these kind of things that you usually encounter in applications. But in this case, you run it in a browser without any plugins. You don't need any plugins. It's HTML and JavaScript effectively, so you don't need any browser plugins there. If you think of how you traditionally build something like this, so now I say traditionally, but let's say a couple of years ago, you need something for the service. So you probably have a server of some kind. I've seen a lot of REST services. So something like this, what you might have, this is now using Spring annotations there, but you publish a REST API to consume it by your application. Then you have the presentation layer. You take HTML, very handy for browsers, and you build up the navigation and the structure for your UI. You're not happy how it looks like, so you add some CSS to make it actually look nice and something that you want it to be. And finally, you add some JavaScript magic to actually make it work, everything working. So yes, this is functional, but you can see that if your application is in nowhere any bigger than this one, it's getting complicated. So you have 4 different languages here, probably as many frameworks you use to actually build the application. And that's a lot of code and like things to remember when you're actually building the application. So there must be a simpler way. And that's what we have. That's no accident. That's our new slogan. And it stands for Fight for Simplicity. It wasn't what you were thinking of. So we try to make things simple up front. So in Vaadin, everything is a component in Java. So you have text field, you have button. If you have been using Swing in the 90s, there are some other old guys like me who have been doing that, I'm sure. So it's very similar syntax. So you have these components which you build your user interface, and then you wrap these components into layouts. So you pick a layout and put them inside there. You get a horizontal layout in this case, or you can have a vertical layout to put them on top of each other. And that's it. So this is what you write in Vaadin. And what you get is fully functional web application running in web browser. If we go further, like I said, we're usually popular among business web applications, internal web applications, so they are more complex than this one. So how does it go? So if you want to have some interactions there, you use event listeners. So it's not a reactive in that sense, but okay, events are superset of reactive programming model. So I think that should be familiar for those guys. But okay, like here, the button click listener is executing add component and adding a label there. So whenever I run this code, enter a text, click the button, this gets executed and I get a new label in the same layout that was there. Simple. Yeah, to the data binding. So if you want to have a form, this is a very simple one as an example, you usually have something on backend. And in Java, that's typically is a POJO. You have a DTO of some kind that you bind into your forms. So you can do that. So you take a person in this case. It's actually cutting a bit there, but hopefully it's readable. And in Vaadin we have this, or in Vaadin 8 we have this new thing called binder, which you take for a specific type, in this case person class, and you bind all the instance field. So this is taking this class where we are at and taking those text fields from there and binding it to the corresponding field in the person object. And then you set the bean as person. The set bean actually is two-way binding, so you can also like use read bean and write bean if you want to do your own transactions there. So now, when we have a button doing the save, we don't actually have to do anything. So when we enter the text there and eventually press save, we show a notification from the person object here. So it's actually writing directly to the bean. So you don't need to do that. Yes. Another thing for business applications, grid. I think this is one of the fundamental components in the framework. There is no application without some kind of listing. So how to do that in Vaadin? So this is now auto-wired, so using the Spring annotations to inject the service into my UI. Then I create a grid instance for a person object. So every row in the grid is for one person. And it's quite cheap to create those proxy instances if you want to have like a proxy object instead of the actual DTOs that you have there. But it depends. You can also use like you can see here. We are using for the columns we are using the method references from the classes. So first name is using the get first name field, but you could have a lambda there also, of course, so you could combine the first name and last name into a single field if you want to. So yeah, basically that's what you need. So then you set the items, get them from the service and set them to the grid. That's it. And you have like a scrollable grid, which is actually lazy loading, so you only bind that on the server side. And it's on the client side, it's loading whenever you scroll. And you can boost this further. So if you have a lot of data, you probably don't want to even call this set items function that way, because it's reading the whole bunch of data and putting it in the memory. But you can have a data provider callback, which is basically doing the same thing. But in a callback way, so getting paged data from the database or backend service in this case, using the sort order and the current scrolling position. So you can very easily create fully lazy loading from the backend, from the database to the UI, to the client side with this kind of code. We still need the count there. And that's something that we have tried to get rid of, but because grid, like inherently, you have a scroll bar there, so you have to know where to scroll. So you have to have some kind of size of it. So it's kind of built in the UX of the whole component. You can't really get rid of it. You can also implement something like infinite scrolling, but that's a different pattern. Then you don't know how many items you have there. But grid is for still a known number of items. It can be a huge number, like a million. It works the same way. So user doesn't see any difference if it's lazy loading or in memory. Typical thing to do in applications, navigations. Vaadin applications are single page applications, so they are running in a single web page. So you don't actually change the web page anytime you navigate. You take components, put them in there, and you take them away and replace with another one. So we have introduced this navigator to actually help, like, declaratively binding that. So you can define area that is your content area, and then you can define that these buttons do the navigation. They actually changed the URL. It's not visible in this demo, but you can have them mapped to a URL, so you can actually navigate into your application and have things like deep linking, which people usually do want to have in applications also. But basically other way around than in paged frameworks like Spring MVC, you have the pages already, but in Vaadin you don't have the page, you have application, and then you add their links to the application state. Yes, making things look good. So far everything has been in Java. Now I introduced a new language there. This is SAS. How many of you know what is SAS? Okay, most. Who is actively using SAS? Okay, so these are variables for SAS compiler. So themes, Vaadin has themes. You can apply a theme to full application to every component. We use SAS to manage that, so making it more object-oriented also. and these variables to configure that. So you can make your own team, but there are not too many people in the world who actually create a full team for Vaadin applications. So I wouldn't recommend that as a first step. So instead using something like this, using those built-in variables and configuring that, they're actually quite powerful. I can show here. So this is background color now. How it actually works. So now what I did here, I changed the background color to darker one. And you can notice that yes, the background color changes, but it also changes the font color here. So it's calculating that, okay, we can't use the black font color anymore. It's not visible for the users. So it's actually changing that. You can override that with another variable if you want to, but by default it's kind of voiding you to create unusable applications. And if you only want to do something like this, you can live with one variable change. There are variables for everything. So you can configure how the components look like, the borders, shadows, and also the depth, and if you want to have gradients or something like this in it. So basically there are a couple of examples, you find them online, that you can use these variables to build something like Facebook looking application to something like this, which is more like a Windows Metro style application. And that's quite powerful. So the typical case when building a business application, it starts from the logo in the top left corner. So you put that there, and then you get some kind of sheet of colors that you should be using, and you can apply those to those variables, and usually you get quite quickly the result you want to have. Right. So how does this work? So we were mostly writing Java there. But in the browsers, it's still HTML and JavaScript. So do we translate it somehow, or what do we do there? Those guys who are actually using Vaadin, they probably know this stuff already, but for others, I took this simple hello world code, which was lying around there. So to explain a bit. So small Vaadin application code without the classes around it. But text field, button, and in the button click listener, we show the notifications once again. So what's happening here? So when the user comes to this application, it gets new instance of this class. This is the UI class, and that's loaded. And to the browser, there is this Bootstrap HTML loaded, which is more or less empty. It has some imports and stylings and CSS imports, and then the JavaScript, which is the kind of thin client, so to speak. So which bootstrap the Vaadin application. So it's a static JavaScript. You can serve it from the CDN or anything like that. So it's not like dynamic one. It's same for every user, for example. But what it does, it calls back to server and gets the application state from there, and then renders it using the components on the client side. So you get the text field and the button like your code said. And now, if you put there some text and push the button, the text doesn't necessarily go to the server yet. You can configure that. You can go if you want to, but it doesn't unless you click the button. And that's sent to the server. So it's a small event sent in JSON format. It's sent to the server side, which Vaadin picks up and calls this method here. And this is calling notification show. So this is basically a notification component saying that, hey, show yourself somewhere in the screen. And that command is sent back to the browser, and you get the notification in the middle of your screen. So very little communication after the bootstrap, and that's kind of the benefit, and that makes it very robust and effective in communication-wise. If you have any questions, you can interrupt me anytime. So, yes, so that's how it works. So now I picked the top 10 features or benefits of the framework. So how I see it personally. There might be different opinions, and if you have different opinions, please share. Number one, the browser support. So basically, when I'm building a web application, I can more or less forget the browsers. So I can use those components. The framework, every single commit on the framework, they go through something like 10,000 different browser tests to make sure that the components still look the same in different browser. There are screenshot-based testing and whatnot. So they are quite heavily tested, and I don't really, if I'm just using those components, I don't have to worry about it. Do they work in different browsers? They typically do. Number two, it's in the JVM. So the application code, actually, it's running in the JVM. It's not running in the browser. It's in the JVM. So I can use whatever there is. And there are quite a few libraries for JVM already. And Java is we are open source. Most of the stuff for JVM, it's open source in some way. So you can find their cryptographic libraries or image manipulation libraries, whatnot. And another thing which is nice, that you can use different languages also. I don't know, my colleagues are promoting Kotlin these days. Anyone like to use that? I know nothing about it, but it looks good. I barely can read it. Scala has been popular for a long time for Vaadin applications, and also there are people using Groovy to build Vaadin applications. But that's not something that we do like natively. It's just a benefit that we run in the JVM. Yes, security. This is also nice. You can't really glue security on top of anything, so it doesn't work that way. You have to kind of keep it in mind all the time. But if you think of in here, we have this validator example with Vaadin 8. So you can, okay, nice fluent coding style for Java 8 style. But these validations, they run now on the server side, so you can't tamper those very easily at least. If this would be a JavaScript framework, I could change the number 4 there quite easily. Whenever I write my application code, it's not published to anywhere. It's running in a sandbox that no one can see. So it creates you a more secure environment. It doesn't save you from all the stupid things that you might do or I might do. So it's not a bulletproof in that sense, but it's a better default anyway. So you're not like actively publishing everything. Another thing that the framework has built in the communication. That's something that the framework handles. And not even the components handle that communication, but the framework handles it for components, and component handle it for your application. So we can add some security on the communication level also. So there is this parameter. This is from the WebXML. As an example, so there is a cross-site request forgery prevention built in with the double cookie pattern. So the same data is sent also in the headers and in the payload. So it's not so easy to tamper that one. And it's on by default, so you actually have to disable it if you need to have it off. And you might need to have it off for some testing environments that actually do these kind of cross-site requests. Yeah, but those are part of the framework features. something that I personally like, that it's like very, how would I say, it's not very obvious to see, but it's user session first. So when you create a variable here, I create a text field. This text field is inside this UI instance, and this instance is for this user. So this text field is also for this user. So even though I'm running in a server environment, I'm not sharing the data like directly with the other users, but this is this user's first name or my name. So if you compare to other server frameworks, it's kind of quite easy to see that you get these isolated sessions. So this is basically the session. It's the same. Yeah, sure.
I have a question. One instance per user or per open tab?
Sorry, one
instance per user or per open tab?
Yeah, you're right. UI is for the window, so basically for the tab. Yes, you're right. So that's for the open tab. So you can get multiple UIs in different tabs, so they are separate instances. But the session is still per user, so they share the same session. But you're right, it's per tab or per window or whatever that might be in a browser. So one UI represents what's visible for the user basically at the time. And this was changed in Vaadin 7. It used to be like there was this application which was for all the tabs, and you were using that, but the UI is really for the visible part, which is one tab. Client server, I noticed my example isn't very good, but anyway, the point is that every component in the framework, they are like small client servers. So if I took this is how you receive an upload in Vaadin. So you implement the receiver interface, and in this case we just create a temp file and use that for the data. And then here we create the upload component and use the receiver to store the uploaded file. But this upload component also has a client-side part, and this is the server-side part is the API usually that the programmer sees. This is what you see when you build the application. But what the user actually sees, it probably sees a dialog of some kind of button where to open that dialog, maybe a field where the file name is visible, and that's the UX part of the upload component. So you have always the two parts, and you can balance between these two. So if you think of any Vaadin component, text field, upload, grid is actually a very good example because there is a lot of client-side functionality there, which is for UX. So how to make it fluent for the user. But the data is still bind on the server side. The data and the business logic is on the server side. So that's actually good separation. So you don't accidentally publish your business logic to the client, but then the server doesn't have to worry about how the UX is created for the user. And because this is built in every component, the component author or the component, whoever implements the component can decide what is the best balance, what gives the best benefit for the developer and for the end user. And you can, as a component vendor, you can change that like you need. Number 6, responsive. So this is something that we could take granted, I guess, these days. So you have to support multiple devices and different screen sizes. There are actually 2 ways to do that. The old school or the new school. I don't know which way around does it go, but in the CSS. But since we are in Java user group, we want to use Java. And you can attach their window resize listener and get that event in your code. And actually you can do a lot more here. You can actually take some component. You can maybe take a grid away and put a listing instead of there if you have a small devices. What I see a lot that this responsiveness is demoed by resizing the browser window. Who does that? So that's the way to demo that, but that's not really the use case of the users. Usually they don't do that much. They either have like a mobile phone or they have a desktop, and in the desktop they don't want to have the mobile view. They want to have a narrower desktop view, but in the mobile they want to have a mobile view, which is works differently. They might have a like touch enabled widgets or something like that. But you can do that, and I would first do it in the Java code instead of the. But if you are a front-end guy, you might be more happier with the CSS syntax. Vaadin users, anyone using WebSockets? You are, okay, yeah. Maybe I can ask some experience. How does it look? Because in here it looks perfect. So you only add this one. so if you want to use WebSockets in your Vaadin application, you simply add one annotation there, and that's all you need. Because the communication is handled by the framework, it just switches from the HTTP, which is the default, to WebSocket communication. There are also fallbacks there, so if WebSockets are not available, it tries to emulate the same thing with the long polling, and there was something else also. Can't remember, but anyway, there was a couple of fallbacks for the push. So if WebSockets are not available, the only thing that you need to do, okay. Asynchronous programming is asynchronous programming, so you don't like that anyway. But if you are updating the UI from a background thread, you have to log the UI. Otherwise, if there are multiple updates to the same UI, God knows what it's going to look like. So you log the UI for that, and there is this access method that you can wrap your actions into easily and call the UI updates. So, for example, if you want to show an alert when a file has been uploaded or something like that, you can do it with this kind of code. But that's it. It's generally quite simple code. I don't know if you agree, but it would be nice to hear in practice how it works. So in demos it always works fluently. One of my recent favorites, this inversion of control. Who is using Spring? Okay, most of them, okay. Anyone using CDI? No. What? Somehow I feel that it's like two camps, so you either use Java EE, CDI or Spring, but it seems to be the cool guys use the Spring here. So. Yeah, basically they are the same in the IOC sense. So in Spring you auto-wire stuff there, but you can also inject stuff. So, but you barely see the difference between CDI and Spring. But you can inject your UI, so you don't have to have a. It just picks the server basically picks it up. So these are the UIs, and you can specify their URLs or URI fragments for the different UIs, and then you can inject your backend services into your UI. You can also inject another components there. So you have a couple of scopes there, session scope and view scope, which you can use to actually inject stuff there, which is very nice, unless overused. Then it becomes very complicated to debug because everything is inverse. Yeah, number 9, one of our commercial offerings. So there is for Eclipse and for IntelliJ there is Visual Designer, so you can drag and drop. While it's quite easy to build those UIs in Java code, sometimes it's easier to do it with when you actually see how it's going to look like. And this is actually real Vaadin application running in, it's using Jetty, I guess, there in the background. So it's running there inside Eclipse, and so you're actually running the Vaadin application there. And you can fine-tune the layout and check that the styling is correct and so forth. So that's nice. Last of my top 10 list, my favorite. I work as a community manager on Vaadin, so I work with people, and I think this is where the community lives in. So there is this Vaadin directory in vaadin.com. You can find there, I think this has 640. I think it's a bit more, but there are quite a few additional components for the framework. So it's quite easy to take these components, package them as a jar file because it's Java. You distribute everything in a jar file, and then you can use it from the directory in your applications. People do this, or the companies do this in large scale internally also. They have their own component repositories that there is a team doing the kind of internal application framework, and then there are other teams actually building the applications from those components, and they want to fine-tune the experience to their needs. But this is something that I really like in the framework. So it's you are not stuck with the components that we came up with, and we quite frankly didn't came up with all the good components in the world. There are very good add-ons there, so better than the core components, some of those. This is, I think Dimitri mentioned Spreadsheet already, that this is one of the big ones. So it's actually a single component, so quite huge, but it can, you give it a file as a parameter. It reads an Excel file, and you have an Excel editor in your browser. This is one of the commercial ones also, but kind of no-brainer if you have to have that kind of Excel editing functionality in a browser. It's really like 3 lines of code. Yeah, in Vaadin 8 there was quite a few improvements. I don't go through them here, so check this What's New page there. There is 21 improvements, mostly related to data binding. So the data binding is now typed. It's more Java 8 syntax, and how would I say? It's modern again. It used to be very 2003, but now it's more 2017. Yeah. What's the time running? Yeah, we have still, I guess. I promised to show a couple of ways to get started. So if you want to build your own Vaadin application, where to start? So let's see. I actually picked 3 IDEs. I start my favorite with my favorite one. Who is using Netbeans? There are. Oh, very good. Yeah, we were joking about this before here, so no one is using Netbeans anymore. But there are good things in this IDE. I think that for me personally, I think the best feature is that it's very Maven based. So if you're using Maven, it works with Maven. Both with IntelliJ and Eclipse, they are some kind of overlays on top of that. Yes, they do work, but there are like weird situations every now and then. But not here. So, but So if you want to create a new project for Vaadin, we have a plugin for Netbeans. It's basically work from one of our employees, and we are maintaining it, or he is maintaining it like personally, and it has very good code completion from the directory, for example, which we don't have in any other plugins. So it's, in that sense, it's better than anything else. And it also has these wizards, but basically these wizards are the same as Maven archetype. So if I take project from archetype and put there Vaadin, there are these Vaadin archetype application. So these are different application types. There are some older ones which I wouldn't recommend anymore, but if we take this example, this is like a full example. Let's give it some name, and I keep the rest as default, but you can specify here a team name. If you want to have your own team, it's actually creating it anyway, and then widget set, I can explain that a little bit. And then the UI class name, if you want to fine tune that in this phase, but it's generating you the project. Fast, like lightning. Hopefully it's not calling the network. It wasn't very fast. Yes, let's wait for it. It looks like it failed. Now I lost my network icon also here, so I can't even check if the network is up and running. I'm guessing that the network wasn't that fast. And if they just released a new Vaadin version, so it's picking up the new version there. So we are now in 8.0.5, or what we were at yesterday, so maybe we are at 8.0.6 now. We can actually check that if they release that. They should have. No, it's actually not here, but in the parent BOM. And oh, it's still the 0.5. Those guys. It's late for a couple of days already. We typically have like every 2 weeks we have a maintenance release, so we try to keep up with the fixes that we came in. So yes, the project structure. So this is the parent project, which is basically the belly holder of the other ones. So there is a backend, which is backend like anything else. I think it's fully functional, so you might even use it, but it's something that usually you have somewhere else, like get all products, get all categories, update product. Very good like backend service. That's a separate module. And then there is a production configuration separately. That's for completeness. So if you want to deploy something to production, you want to disable some debug features and so forth. And the actual UI, not here, but here. So you have the My UI again, using theme, and also here you can see how to specify the viewport, and this is where it all starts, the application, the init method. So this is executed for every user when it first comes in there. So this is doing login. And then we have the last module, which is, actually I feel that it might take a while also. The last module is the widget. There was someone asking about how to create a widget for Vaadin, and I don't have like a complete example here, but you can idea in here is a text field connector or extension to a text field. You can see this is also in Java, even though this is now running on the client side. How do I know that it's running on the client side? Because it says client in this package name. So this is Google Web Toolkit. This is what we have been using for implementing our components. But you are not limited to that, and I think very few actually use that anymore. But yeah, here you can see how to make client-side code in Java to extend a Vaadin function. Yes, let's try to run this or debug in the. So Netbeans comes with Glassfish, so that's good enough. Any Java EE server, Tomcat, Jetty, anything will do. Unpacking index. So yes, this is what you see there. So this is the application. It actually doesn't have any password there, so you can just click it in. But this is full application with the grid once again, and you can see the extension in action here. So this is what our own extension to the text field does. It adds this button here to clear the text field. Yeah, so this is basically a full CRUD application you can use to see how the Vaadin application architecture goes. Right. Let's stop that, and let's also stop the server. And let's jump into another idea. So that's one way to do a Vaadin application. We were using. Maybe I had a slide of it. So. Huh? No. So I can show it. So basically, you can do the same from the command line, exactly the same. So we were just using a certain archetype to generate the application. One-liner. Yes, let's do a similar thing with Eclipse. Is this okay? So we have also here we have a plugin. So this is an official one. So you can find it in Marketplace, which I find there. Just search for Vaadin here. And you find a number of version 4 is for the Vaadin 8, so I would recommend using that one. There is version 3 for Vaadin 7, but I think this should be backward compatible, so no worries. I have it installed already, and what it actually does, it installs a couple of wizards here. So you have Vaadin wizards. So if I want to create a new project, I can choose a new project, and what I get is this dialog, and you can see the similarities here again. You have this multi-module, single module, add-on project, and CRUD example. This what we were doing with the Netbeans stuff, and now single module is something that you usually okay with the more with the typical application. So that's just a one Maven module basically. So you get one UI as an example, and you can already run this in your server. I have Tomcat here installed, so it's running here, so you can test it out that it's actually working for you. So, and you can see this is the code that I saw how there earlier already. So text field and caption for there. But what I was thinking I was still show here is the designer a bit. So if we create instead of that we create a design. So let's create a form. There is templates you can choose from. We have a couple you can start using. And I just used the responsive one, which is adaptive to different screen sizes. And you can see here what the form actually looks like. And this is something that you can edit here, so making it different size, changing order here, and so forth. And the way this works with your application code is that it also creates a Java file here. It says here in the beginning that do not edit this file, so do not edit this file. It's generated again and again. So this is for the wiring, basically. So when the form is updated, it's actually an HTML form. You can see the source code also here, and if you're happy to write that, you can do that also, but usually not. Instead, you get this Java binding class, and you can extend this class, so you can inherit this one, and you can see these are protected, so you can use them in the inherited class. Or, yeah, sure. These are always these are extending some layout. Yeah, so it has to be Vaadin layout. Typically CSS layout or vertical layout or something like that. I think if that's inheriting a layout, then I would think it should work. Actually, I'm not sure now, but we can maybe check that later on. So if it actually works, but if it's a layout, maybe it actually may make sense. But typically this is the other way around. So you have the design and then you extend that one and make the modifications there. So then you can regenerate the whole thing again. So if I remove a field, for example, here, take the last name away, I don't have the last name in here also. Actually, I have, because I didn't save this one. But now it should be away from here. I don't have it anymore here, so I would get like a type error in my code if I've been using that later on. And yeah, if I then use this, so what was it called? My form. I use it like any other component in Vaadin. Let's take the text field away. I think there was a button also in there. So in the form, was it submit? Yes. And then we can read the values form first name, yes. And I don't have those anymore, so I add the form into my layout. I'd better restart the server.
By the way, is there any some kind of hot swap or similar, or should we restart every time?
You should use a hot swapper. What did I do here? Okay, I spoiled it up already. Let's see if the foo works. Yeah. It's but okay, the logic still works. I don't know why I messed it up, the layout. This is not how it was looking. Anyway, you get an idea. That's the intentional demo effect that I was doing. Now I'm wondering why. I guess it's because of my teaming. You can see this is a servlet here, so you can run this as a servlet. And you were asking about the hot swap. JRebel is very good. Also in Spring there is this, what is it called? The Spring guys know. DevTools, yeah. So that works fluently. So I would definitely recommend something like that. So it's much more faster than. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's yeah. It's
With services and data, but if you use directly for Wadding only,
yeah,
it works.
yeah, and also already like a debug hot deploy works quite well in Java, so the native. But JRebel adds a little bit more logic to that, so it's more flexible. You don't have to restart that much, and it actually makes sense when you have a large application that takes a long time to bootstrap. So it's really saving time. Right. Yes. So this was Eclipse. What I had IntelliJ left.
So you couldn't ask me.
Oh yeah, who was using Eclipse? Yeah, that's true. No one. Really? Okay. So we had a wrong market for our designer here. So fortunately, we have it also for IntelliJ. Who's using IntelliJ? All right. All right. This is a bit different than in Spain. Like a completely opposite, I would say. Okay. You know, okay. You know the guys who make IntelliJ or something? For the Eclipse, yeah. Yeah, it looks like it, yeah. So I don't actually have it installed for the IntelliJ, so I'm not using IntelliJ that much myself. So, but what I was about to show here was actually something else, so which is this one. You know this one. So who has been using Start or the Spring Initializer? Okay, yeah. This is very handy. Okay, I'm doing mostly like small demos, so this is extremely handy. So you can get like a configured POM file with the dependencies that you want. So and you can find Vaadin here. So you want to use Vaadin and you want to use JPA and maybe some database, and then you generate the project, and it downloads you the zip file. Actually already had it somewhere, so yeah, there, so I can extract it. So basically a Maven project that you can import into here, so I can take the import. Okay, it was already there. Maven project. I just keep the defaults here, asking what Java version to use and so forth. Yeah, what I was talking about, the overlay. So things like these. What the hell is this? Maven project need to import it. What? Why? Well, enable auto import. Just importing it. So yeah, so you have the demo application here. So and those who know how this works, it's a Java application basically. So it's including the server already. So I don't have to have a server to deploy it. I just run this one. And the way to import Vaadin here is to inject it. So we create a UI. You can see that I'm not very savvy with this IDE. And we extend the UI class from Vaadin. What was it? Option? Yes. And then I have to implement the only method, which is the init, the basic bootstrap for the user. And in here, okay, let's do something simple, just to see that it works. And we need the label. This is actually something that I like here, that it's naming the based on Java doc. So yes, so I should be able to run this or debug this. Let's try. It's starting the server. I guess it's using Tomcat by the default. So local. Yes, it works. Yeah, so very little code to get started with the application in here. I was thinking that I also saw about the directory, how to use directory. So if we go there, hopefully the network is, because I found an interesting component. I haven't been using it in any application, but I will. This looks very promising. This Sketch Canvas add-on. It's from my colleague, and it's apparently something that was client project of ours, but they contributed it kind of back to the open source community. So they sponsored the development. But the way, if I want to use this in my application, I can find here the Maven dependency for this one. And go back to my project. Spring guys are very strict where to put these dependencies. Hopefully I did it in the... Don't share now. Yes, let's see if I have it here. So now I have the Sketch Canvas available. New Sketch Canvas. Was it size that? Yes. Oh. Like I said, not very savvy with this ID. And then I put the canvas there. And let's restart. Now the dev tools would be very handy. But let's see. No, local. Yes. So I have the component here. I can start drawing in my application. So if I want to use something that someone else has been implementing earlier, you don't need anything else. You just pick it up as a dependency to your project and start using it. So quite handy. And there are like 600 of these different components. I can show a bit more because I was trying this out. So if I want to, for example, have a preview what I was writing or drawing there, so I can create an image for that. This is a stock Vaadin component now, so this is coming from Vaadin. And let's create a button preview using no, like this. So lambda for callback for the button click listener, and then what else? Yes, then in the canvas request image as base 64. That sounds handy. And what does it take? It takes a string. I think it was image data. And also lambda callback for that. So now I can, in my image component, I can set the source for that. And now something for the ancient Vaadin APIs. You wouldn't have guessed this one. External resource. This is actually a URL. And you can provide there a string. And because images, they work with the base 64 encoded, so I can put the image data there directly. And now also some layout. Let's use vertical layout. Put their canvas, button, and image, and save that. Let's restart. So I can create these components in which order I want to, or even have them in a hash map or something, and then put them in the layout in a certain order so they get laid out properly. So now I should have the canvas here, and when I click preview, I actually get the image data here. So yes, so just showing that this is the way to build a business logic in Vaadin application using those components. So you don't usually need that much of a code to actually build a working application that does something that you take like days to build with the core HTML technologies. All right, coming to end, that was my last IDE I was using. Yes, using the initializer. If you want to see a like complete application build tutorial, my colleague Marcus built this to-do application. It's a fully functional to-do application. You can find that in GitHub, and there is also a YouTube video for this one. Yes. Who's that? That's Olli. That's my colleague from sales. Greetings from Vaadin sales. So what we actually do there, we help our customers to build applications. So it's open source project and framework. You can use it as you wish. But if you need help, we know how to use the framework. So you can ask our help there. And Olli is there responding to you. I can also respond to you if you want to. And that's it. So